On the air. Everybody ready to go? I will call the April 5th meeting of the Environment and Land Use Committee to order. Roll call of committee members. We have, we'll just say your name, we'll
Randy
go around.
Severson.
Stacy Klein.
Dave Larson.
Tony Munson.
John Waldera.
And we'll just go with Mike.
Mark Carlson.
Verge Gamroth, Department of Land Management.
Haley Passo.
Mike Cornman, Department of Land Management.
And Andy Todd is virtual. I can see his little picture there.
Yep, Andy Todd's here.
There we go. I certify that open meeting law requirements have been met with proper posting. We have a 22-item agenda. Any changes or? Motion to approve. Second by Waldera. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adoption of meeting minutes. We have a meeting on March 8th and March 20th. Any corrections or additions from either of those minutes from the committee? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Waldera, second by Larson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. It is 8:32. Our first rezone is supposed to start at 8:30, so we're good to go. So I will call the public hearing to order at 8:32. I have for land change rezone from R20 to commercial for Whole Toad LLC. Randy, would you like to read?
All right. This notice of public hearing of land use change rezone. There will be a public hearing before the Trempealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. in the county boardroom of the courthouse, 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. The purpose is for a land use change or rezone from residential 20 to commercial on approximately 2.07 acres, more or less, for the purpose of making the zoning on this lot uniform with its current commercial business in order to facilitate vehicle parking. Part of the southeast in section 33, all in Township 19 North, Range 9 West, Town of Trempealeau, Trempealeau County, Wisconsin. The parcel numbers as follows. Hearing is requested by Whole Toad LLC, landowner, Andrew G. Todd, petitioner, Arcadia, Wisconsin. Trempealeau County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538 this number?
Yep.
1894. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Verge Gamroth with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916 or email at verge.gamroth@county-trempealeau, Wisconsin, U.S. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comment to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email once again to Verge. Please know that written comments will be read at the public hearing up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author and the request that the letter be read at a particular meeting date. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week prior to the meeting date by calling Verge Gamroth of the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916. Sincerely, Verge Gamroth, zoning technician.
Thank you, Randy. At this time, I would call for public testimony. If anyone would like to call from at home, 715-538-1894. Verge, can you give us a summary overview?
Sure. Just note that Andy is a member of this committee,
Yes.
so I assume he will be refraining from the vote.
Is that accurate, Andy?
Yes, I will be.
Okay.
Okay.
The rezone is for 2.07 acres, and it's from R20 to commercial, as we said. The property is right behind Toad's Cove business, and as it said, Andy would like to rezone that for additional parking and so forth. The public hearing was published in the newspaper 2 consecutive weeks, 10 days prior to the hearing, on March 15th and 22nd. Letters were sent to all adjoiners, and I checked my email this morning, and I have no correspondence. And also, I have the correct phone number on the publication, so. The land use is R20, however, all the lots to the land use plan states for the property to stay in R20. However, all the lots to the south of this lot along Highway 35 are commercial. And like I said, this lot would be adjoining to Todd's current property. So, and if approved, this would go to full county board on April 18th.
Okay. Thank you, Verge. Again, I would invite public comment from people at home at 715-538-1894. Andy, is there any comments you'd like to make towards this?
Well, basically, there's no drive access when it comes to residential, so I'm not sure how it actually fell into a residential spot, because there's no driveway access to get to it anyway, except through Toad's Cove. Another thing is I went around to the neighbors and I got their signatures, basically saying it's totally okay for me to turn that into commercial, being that on both sides, for the most part, is commercial, all the way to the end of the lot, exception to one of the houses, as you can see next to Centerville Homes. So instead of just letting the land sit there, I just wanted to be part of Toad's Cove.
Okay. Any, again, I'll call for public testimony, 715-538-1894. Is anyone that wishes to speak to that, to this rezone? Otherwise, do we have a letter from the town, I assume?
Yes, the letter is dated February 10th from the town of Trempealeau. Letter states, this letter is written with reference to the request by Andrew Todd to rezone property described as tax parcel 028-00517-0015 from R20 to commercial in the town of Trempealeau. The board has no objection to this rezone. Sincerely, town of Trempealeau. Rick Nemetz, chairman. And I also have the letter that Andy referred to, where he has signatures. Do you want me to read what that letter states?
I think that'd be good.
Okay, it says, Dear Toad's Cove neighbors, and is dated February 6th of 2023. Toad's Cove would like to change over my back lot from residential to commercial. This lot has no driveway access and butts up to commercial lots on the west and east sides. This was an oversight when setting up the building lots. I would like to get Toad's Cove under one zoning parcel. Please sign telling the zoning department that you approve of the change. Thank you, Andrew Todd. And it's signed by Jennifer Chapman, Callie Rebels, Paul Barrett, signature is missing, and Centerville Homes, Jeff Steer. It's signed by Jeff.
Okay.
And just so
Okay.
you know, I did talk to Paul, and Paul's been trying to get over to my store, and he did a couple times to sign that paper, because I had an extra one there, and it just didn't happen. So through my testimony, he said he's totally okay with it.
Okay, thank you, Andy. If there isn't anyone wishing to publicly comment on this, I'm going to call, well, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:39, and I would entertain a motion from the committee. Move to
Second.
approve Larson, second by Klein. Any discussion or question from Andy, for Andy? Seems pretty logical, I think, to all of us, so. Okay, All in favor of approving this rezone, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This will move on to full county board.
Okay, and I'll have a resolution for you to sign after we get done with all these.
Okay, thank you, Virg. So our next item on, up for public hearing is a land use change rezone from exclusive agriculture 2, EA2, to commercial for J&T storage. So, at this point, I'll call this public hearing to order at 8:40. And Randy, would you like to read us what we're doing?
There will be a public hearing before the Trempealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 8:35 a.m. in the county boardroom of the courthouse, 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. The purpose is a land use change or rezone from exclusive Ag 2 to commercial on approximately 2 acres, more or less, for the purpose of building mini storage units. Part of the southwest 1/4 of the northeast 1/4 and the northwest 1/4 of the southeast 1/4 of Section 3, all in Township 24 North, Range 7 West, Town of Sumner, Trumpealeau County, Wisconsin. Parcel numbers are listed. The hearing is requested by J&T Storage LLC landowner, John and Tina Severson petitioner, Osseo, Wisconsin. Trumpealeau County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538-1894. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Virg Gamroth with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916 or email at virg.gamroth@county.trempealeau.wisconsin.us. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comment to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email to Virg. Please know that written comments will be read at the public hearing up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author and the request that the letter be read at a particular meeting date. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week to the meeting date by calling Virg Gamroth of the Department of Land Management, 715-538-1916. Sincerely, Virg Gamroth, zoning technician.
Thank you, Randy. Again, if anyone's at home and wishes to offer public comment on this, they can call 715-538-1894. Virg, would you please read us, or give us an overview of what we're hearing?
Okay. Again, the application is to rezone from exclusive Ag 2 to commercial for putting up storage units. As you can see on the map, it would go in Lot 1 there, and this is right next door to the I-94 corridor in the town of Sumner. It was published in the paper March 15th and March 22nd in the Trumpealeau County Times. Letters were sent to all adjoining landowners. I have not heard nothing up to this point from anyone. Current land use plan is exclusive Ag 2, so the rezone would be contrary to the comprehensive plan. And if approved, this would go to full county board on April 18th.
Okay, thank you, Virg. Again, I'll call for public comment from anyone here. I know nobody signed up here for it.
I do have one comment. John did call me, John Severson called me
Okay.
yesterday afternoon late and said that they were unable to make it, but he said if we had any questions that we couldn't answer here, that I could call him on his cell phone and he'd be available.
Very good. I will call for public comment from anyone at home at 715-538-1894. Virg, could you read the letter from the town for us?
I have a letter from the town of Sumner dated February 17th, 2023. Dear Sir, at our last board meeting, we had a request from John Severson, who wants to rezone a 2-acre parcel of ag land on Anderson Road in town of Sumner to build storage units. The board has no problem with this request. Sincerely, Jane Brown.
Okay, thank you, Verge. Again, if anyone at home wishes to offer public comment, they can call 715-538-1894. So, at that point, hearing nobody ringing the phone and nobody reaching out to us, I'm going to close public comment. We close the public hearing at 8:45, and I would call for a motion from the committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Klein,
I'll second it.
second by Todd. Okay, any discussion, questions from the committee regarding this rezone?
I just
Go ahead, Randy.
wonder why, it's going to be a kind of crazy survey, land description with the way that lot is placed in that funny shape already. I'm wondering why they didn't try to use a current border instead of creating all these little lanes.
Well, I'm just based on my personal experience, I'm thinking it has to do with taxation. And some of it may be too that if you rezone over an acre, then you get into DNR stormwater regulations too. So,
Yeah, but I mean, just shifting. I guess, shifting the border to an existing lot line already seems like it would have been.
yeah.
I looked at the same thing, had the same question, but I can see the potential for possibly a couple residential lots around there.
Behind it is a room for access.
Yep, it looks like there could be access.
Do we want to get, do we want to get John on the phone?
Do you guys feel like we should talk to him about it?
Just so you know, this description is for the rezone only. It's not a certified survey map. It's not going to be. It's for description purposes only so that we can map the rezone.
So it's not a official survey. Nothing's changing in the,
He's not actually creating a
we're not
separate
creating
lot.
lots.
Correct. He's not creating a separate lot. He just provided us with a description
Of where
so
he
that we
wants
can
it.
map the rezone for commercial.
So to that end, drawing could be a little bit off here.
And I know this says certified survey map on it.
Yep.
But that's all we had for description, and we did call the surveyor or the landowner and say, we don't need it as a certified survey map, we just need the description.
Okay. He was just able to provide this.
Right, and that's why if you look at the resolution here, the second page gives the description, and it doesn't say a certified survey map. It has a parcel description.
Okay.
I do have a question. Was there not a rezone request for this area already?
That was the other side of the road.
Other side of 94.
And we'll,
Also for storage units? That rezone request was?
yeah, and we're going to revisit that one later.
Yep. Okay, any other, does the committee wish that we call John, or?
I don't know if I have enough concern to justify that.
That's fair.
If he was here, I'd like to ask the question what the future plans were, but I
I
don't know.
think he's available. I mean, if you would like to ask the question, it's not a bad
It's
one.
one lot, because if it's commercial, there's no restrictions on the one side for the lot line to have it, and there's no easement to get back in there.
Right.
I don't know how to run this.
You just dial
Okay, so-
715-299-0952. And then I would put him on speakerphone.
Hopefully everybody can hear this,
Went all the way to
because this will be the best way I'm doing
town
it.
road.
It's not.
I would have less concerns, but this.
Hello, is this John?
This is.
John, this is Kellen Nelson. I'm calling from your rezone at the county boardroom. There was a question from one of the committee members as to if there was a reason for why the parcel or your rezone was set up the way it was and not using an existing border. Basically interested if there was a plan for dividing future lots in doing housing in the future.
No, there's not.
Okay,
I just didn't need the zone because I'd never utilized that much land for storage units.
okay,
So that's why I selected the 2 acres
okay,
for that area.
okay.
With the grade elevation, that's kind of the reason why there.
Why it fit where it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that satisfy the committee?
Me.
Yeah, from my part, from the committee part, yeah, from a
Okay,
personal, seems like there could be better use of the lot, but that's.
but maybe it has to do, but he mentioned
That's
that.
his business.
He mentioned the terrain though.
Right, yeah,
Maybe it's
okay.
too steep to,
Okay.
I don't know, so.
Okay,
Yeah, the more you have Anderson Road there, it inclines up, you know. It the slope keeps going up gradually.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for John from the committee? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of approving this rezone, say aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. This rezone will move forward to the April 20th, is it?
April
18th.
15th.
County
No,
Board,
April 18th.
April 18th County Board
Yeah.
meeting, so. That's all we have for you, John.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye. Excuse me. So, I will begin the next public hearing at 8:51, which is a public hearing for land use change rezone from rural residential to commercial by Mervyn E. and Fannie Miller. Randy, would you read the call?
There will be a public hearing before the Trumpealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 8:40 a.m. in the County Boardroom of the Courthouse, 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. The purpose is a land use change or rezone from rural residential to commercial on approximately 3 acres, more or less, to erect a building for a rafter manufacturing business. Part of the southeast one quarter of the northeast one quarter of Section 18 and the southwest one quarter of the northwest one quarter of Section 17, all in Township 22 North, Range 7 West, Town of Pigeon, Trumpealeau County, Wisconsin. The parcel numbers are listed. Hearing is requested by Mervyn E. and Fannie I. Miller, landowner, Merwin Miller, petitioner, Whitehall, Wisconsin. Trumpealeau County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538-1894. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Verge Gamroth with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916 or email at verge.gamroth@county.trempealeau.wisconsin.us. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comment to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email Verge. Please know that the written comments will be read at the public hearing up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author and the request that the letter be read at a particular meeting date. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week prior to the meeting date by calling Verge Gamroth of the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1916. Sincerely, Verge Gamroth, zoning technician.
Thank you, Randy. If anyone at home wishes to offer public comment on this, please call 715-538-1894. Verge, would you read a summary?
Sure. I'd like to acknowledge Mervyn, who's here. Mervyn, do you want to move to the table over here? Okay. As the notice said, he's rezoning from rural residential to commercial on approximately 3 acres. He's actually moving a rafter business, or would move a rafter business to this property. And we felt, since the property that he's moving it from is owned commercial, that we should, and precedents had already been set on that business, we should keep the same zoning. The hearing was published in the newspaper on March 15th and March 22nd. Letters were sent to all adjoining landowners. I did have an inquiry from a gentleman who expressed his concerns about the driveway being on the corner of a busy highway. So I reached out to the Department of Transportation, and I do have that letter. I can read it into the record when you want me to. The comp plan calls for the land to remain in residential zoning, so this rezone would be contrary to the comp plan. If approved, this would go to full county board on 4/18 of '23.
Okay, thank you, Verge. Again, I'll call for public comment. If anyone at home wishes to offer, they can call 715-538-1894. Mervyn, is there anything you'd wish to add, or she covered it pretty well?
Pretty much,
Okay, fair enough. Verge, do we have a letter from the town?
Yes. This is dated March 7th, 2023. The town of Trempealeau by roll call vote is in agreement to rezone Mervyn Miller's property from agricultural to commercial for the purpose of a rafter factory. Mervyn Miller has spoken to the Wisconsin DOT, and our understanding is that the southern driveway is approved for truck traffic and the northern driveway must be closed. Signed by Dave A. Erickson, town chairperson.
Okay, thank you, Verge. Again, if anyone wishes to offer public comment on this, they should call 715-538-1894. And you said we had a letter from the DOT.
Yeah, from the Department of Transportation. I emailed Chris Michaels, who Mervyn had mentioned that he had talked to, and I got a letter back from Chris Michaels dated March 20th. It says, Verge, Jill Proud actually met with Mr. Miller on site this past winter to discuss his driveways. She approved the added truck trips with the condition that his northerly driveway be removed and the entire current property would have one driveway to the highway. Both of the houses and the business would share one driveway. Mr. Miller agreed to these terms, but I don't know if they have completed the paperwork. Let me know if you need further info. Thanks, Chris Michaels, Systems and Planning and Operations Supervisor at Wisconsin Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you, Verge. Anyone, what's that? Nothing. Oh. Hearing no phone ringing, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 8:57, and I would entertain a motion from the committee.
Make a motion to approve.
Do you want to testify, Bruce?
I just want,
Well, technically, you should fill out a form and go to the front.
I just wondering, Mervyn, where is this gonna be? In the sand pit or behind the car?
Just middle line. Corner.
I know, but we have to keep order and we have to put it in the record. Here we go.
I'm very familiar with it.
That's where it's going.
I wasn't sure where, if it was going in the sand pit or back.
No, right in there. Just below my house.
Right behind the house.
You have, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, Bruce? Anything else?
That's the only question I had.
Okay.
Make
All
a
right.
motion to approve.
Okay, move to approve by Waldera,
Second.
second by Klein. Any questions, discussion from the committee on this? Mr. Monson?
Shared driveway, is that deed, you recorded on the deed? I mean, do you own both properties and both home sites now, or no? No. The smaller one, which is where the red ring is around now, that is my son-in-law's.
Okay.
Even though we're living there, they're living in the big one, but technically that's all it is on the drawing.
Okay.
Well, he's obtaining his own driveway, right?
How do you,
Right, it's what he's using now.
that's the question.
Oh, well, I thought it was for the other house. Okay, was this for the two houses, so, but you're going around, you're actually gonna go around his parcel, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I think you got a map of
Which
that.
it showed on the first one that you had picked up here.
Yeah, I'm not, that would be between those two,
Okay.
you know.
I mean, if one property wanted to be sold at one point in time, it would not have an entryway.
I had that same concern looking at this. Because it is a federal highway. Permits for new driveways are very difficult and most of the time impossible to get.
Right, but we have no jurisdiction
I know, but I'm
over
just.
the state highway.
I realize that, but I'm just.
It's just a
Is
unique
he
situation.
aware? Right.
For the resale, basically.
Right.
And I understand. I understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's something for him to be aware, I guess, so, fair concern, though. Any other questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor of approving this rezone, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. This will move on to full county board on the 18th. Next, I will switch gears just a tiny bit and go to public hearing for a conditional use permit for the Franson Family Trust. And I will call this hearing to order at 9:01, excuse me. Randy, would you read the,
Okay, which one is this, the citing permit or the?
so we have, first we have
This one.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There will be a public hearing held before the Trumpealeau County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at 8:45 a.m. in the county boardroom. Courthouse, 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. Purpose is to consider a conditional use permit for ag use in the R8 zoning district. Location is the southeast one quarter of the southwest one quarter, section 10, Township 23 North, Range 8 West, in the town of Hale, Trumpealeau County, Wisconsin. The parcel number is listed. The hearing is requested by Franson Family Trust owner, Strum, Wisconsin, Matt Franson, Christopher Franson, petitioners, operators. Trumpealeau County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538-1894. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Mark Carlson with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1919 or email to markcarlson@county.trempealeau.wisconsin.us. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comments to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email to Mark Carlson. Please know that written comments will be read at the public hearing up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week prior to the meeting date by calling Mark Carlson at the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1919. Sincerely, Mark Carlson, Zoning and Sanitary Specialist.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Again, I would offer anyone at home that wishes to offer public comment to call us at 715-538-1894. If you guys, whoever wants to speak from the Franson clan, want to grab a seat at the end there. Mark, could you give us a brief overview of what we're going to discuss?
Well, this area is zoned R8, as stated in the public hearing notice, and that requirement is to have a conditional use to allow for general agricultural use, which would entail livestock, facility. And so that's the requirement of the public hearing. It was posted in the paper. It was, the neighbors were notified. We have no input on it, from anybody from the public. And I guess the reason is because of the R8 zoning district. And that's kind of why we're.
Yep.
It's been that way ever since the comp plan, I think, was developed, ain't it? Been R8?
Yes. That's a whole nother discussion there.
Yes. Okay.
I apologize. Was I supposed to fill something out to comment?
If you'd like to comment, yes. There's a.
Yep. And we'll get you included for sure. So, again, if anyone at home wishes to offer comment, you should call 715-538-1894. and then we'll see what we have to discuss. Mark, we have a letter from the town, I
Yes, we do,
assume?
yes.
Why don't we hear that while we're waiting?
The letter is dated March 2nd, 2023. It's to the Trempealeau County Environmental and Use Committee. On March 1st, 2023, Town of Hale Board met to discuss the conditional use permit for 2 chicken barns on 8 acres of land owned by Franson Family Trust. One barn would be owned by Matt Franson and the other would be owned by Christopher Franson. The land is zoned R8 and a conditional use permit would be required. The area would be used for chicken barns located on Pulaski Road, which is off of Lund Road. Lund Road is located approximately 6 miles south of Strum on County D. The paperwork for the project was presented to the board, and the board has no objections to the siting. The only concern voiced was how the barns would affect Pulaski Road. 2 loads of feed would need to be delivered every week, and was concerned whether the road would be damaged during the spring thaw. However, it was noted that the lower portion of the road is now crushed rock, so there would be not an issue with road breaking up. The conditional use permit application was posted in 3 public locations prior to the meeting. No opposition was made from the public, was voiced at the meeting, and after further discussion, a motion was made by David Lingen, seconded by Greg Fonstad, to recommend to the County Environmental Land Use Committee their approval of the conditional use permit. The motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit was passed unanimously by the board. The letter of approval for conditional use permit for 2 chicken barns is being authorized by the Town of Hale Board and being presented to the Environmental Land Use Committee. Donald Halverson, Town of Hale Clerk.
Thank you, Mark. Again, I'm going to let people at home know if they'd like to offer any comment. They can call 715-538-1894. And we have one person here then, it appears to.
Actually, I asked him, and he said he wants to testify for the next hearing, which is the livestock facilities permit part of it. So, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's all we have for that then. So at this point, I'm going to call this public hearing, close it at 9:07, and I would entertain a motion from the committee on this.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Larson, second by Munson. Any discussion, questions for the Franson family?
Yeah, I got a question. If it's a conditional use permit, so they're good unless there's a complaint or they have an issue later down the road, if they're gonna build some, buildings on this, how does that work when it comes to a year down the road, there's some problems, and the conditional use permit ain't gonna work anymore? Do they take the buildings down? How does that work, just for my knowledge?
Well, being as a conditional use, I mean, there's, this is kind of a poor example of, in the past, we've limited the amount of, like, we had a conditional use permit for one in a residential area, we limited to like 10 cattle. In this case, you could, restrict it to no more expansion, have these existing coops only in this area, no more coops in this area. That'd be the only way it would be addressed. And then on the next hearing, the livestock facility permitting, they're meeting certain requirements, environmentally with their waste removal and all that sort of, would be addressed with that.
So, you're saying they, for some reason, like I said, just a year down the road, it just didn't work. I'm not saying it's not gonna, I'm just saying if it doesn't work, do they take the barns down? If they lose their permit? I'm just throwing that out.
I would say if there's no conditions put on it and they're not, I don't see where we could make them remove it. I don't know what the scenario would be for them to have to be required to remove it. If it's granted to be doing what the permit was asked to be granted for, and, unless there was conditions that were put on it, and they went above and beyond those conditions, we couldn't theoretically remove the conditional use permit.
Rich, you have something to offer?
To comment, what's happened in the past is if we get a lot of complaints, typically the applicant is brought back in, and the committee addresses those concerns.
Okay.
Okay,
At that time.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Andy?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any other questions for the Franson family, for Matt? Okay. Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor of approving this conditional use permit, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So I will call the public hearing to order at 9:10 for another conditional use permit for the Franson Family Trust. Randy, would you go ahead and read?
There will be a public hearing held before the Trumbull County Environment and Land Use Committee on Wednesday, April 5th at 2023 at 8:50 a.m. in the County Boardroom Courthouse, 36245 Main Street, Whitehall, Wisconsin. The purpose is to consider a conditional use permit for a livestock siding permit, construction of 2 broiler barns. The location is the southeast 1/4 of the southwest 1/4, Section 10, Township 23 North, Range 8 West, in the town of Hale, Trumbull County, Wisconsin. The parcel number is listed. Hearing is requested by Franson Family Trust, owner, Strum, Wisconsin, Matt Franson, Christopher Franson, petitioners, operators. Trumbull County invites you to join this meeting as follows. To provide public comment on these hearings, please call 715-538-1894. Your attendance and comments are encouraged at this hearing. If you are unable to attend and have any questions, please call Mark Carlson with the Department of Land Management at 715-538-1919 or email to markcarlson@county.trempealeau.wisconsin.us. If you are unable to attend and desire to submit a written comment, please send your written comments to the Department of Land Management, P.O. Box 67, Whitehall, Wisconsin, 54773, or email to Mark Carlson. Please know that written comments will be read at the public hearing up to 250 words. All written comments must include the name and address of its author. Any special interest groups or expert witnesses will be allowed 20 minutes to give a presentation and must register at least 1 week prior to the meeting date by calling Mark Carlson of the Department of Land Management, 715-538-1919. Sincerely, Mark Carlson, Zoning and Sanitary Specialist.
Thank you, Randy. Again, if anyone at home wishes to offer public comment to this conditional use permit, they can call 715-538-1894. Mark, can you give us a overview of this?
I guess the requirement for this conditional use, because we have in our Trumbull County Livestock Facilities Performance Standards or Ordinance, a new livestock facility of 300 and 909 animal units shall be considered a conditional use and shall require a conditional use permit. The livestock facility shall immediately comply with the agriculture performance standards and prohibitions contained within subchapter 2 of statute NR 151 and the permit application and compliance requirements of statute ADCAP 51.30. A public hearing shall be required. I guess the purpose of this is because of that requirement right there. And this is one that, it's my understanding we cannot put conditions on, and we never have in the past anyways, but it's one that's a requirement, but it's one that cannot be any conditions put on it because of the requirements that they're being made to meet with the state requirements anyways, so.
Okay.
And this is another one that was posted as the other one was, and I received no public comment. I do have a separate letter from the town of Hale. They kind of go hand in hand, but this one kind of addresses more of the, this conditional use, and then, like I said, no other comment was made.
Okay, thank you, Mark. If anyone at home wishes to offer public comment, please call 715-538-1894. We do have somebody here who wishes to ask a question or two. Is that correct, Mr. Scott?
Yes, Scott Nicolai.
Would you want to come up so you can be on a microphone and the TV camera can get you?
Go perhaps I should have commented on the previous, but it kind of covered my concerns, which were road conditions, also waste runoff, and what type of traffic will be involved in the roadway, I guess is my concern on Powelke versus Lund Road, which is much straighter and in better shape. So those are my concerns. I had questions, and that's about all I had.
Okay, thank you. Again, one last call. If there's anyone at home that wishes to offer any public comment on this, 715-538-1894. And we can hear the letter from the town, I think.
Sure, this one was dated the same date as the last one, and they met on March 1st to discuss the conditional use permit for the Franson Family Trust in regards to animal units that they owned. Determined that after the 2 chicken barns were completed with a total of 308 animal units, the animal units would exceed the 300 and a conditional use permit would be needed. The farm is located in an R8 area within the town of Hale. There was no objections to the conditional use permit, but the board questioned why the township continues to be R8 when the town board voted to change it several years ago. The board's agenda was posted in 3 public locations prior to the meeting. All the paperwork regarding this conditional use permit was presented to the board for review. There was no opposition from the general public. After a brief discussion, motion by Greg Fonstad, seconded by David Lingen, recommended to the Environmental Land Use Committee their approval of this conditional use permit. A motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit was passed unanimously by the board. This letter of approval is being authorized by the Town of Hale Board and being presented to the Trumbull County Environmental Land Use Committee. Don Halverson, Town of Hale Clerk.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Anything that you guys would like to add? It's pretty well explanatory. Okay, at this point then, at 9:17, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion from the committee.
I'll make that
Motion to approve.
A motion from Munson. Andy, you second it?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion, questions from the committee? Ms. Waldera?
This isn't in regards to the request for the conditional use, but I would like to ask, when it comes to the question of the zoning and to the point that the town of Hale made, is that something that we can put on the agenda for our next committee meeting to further discuss?
You're referencing the ag versus R8
Correct.
designation. That's a process.
Please note the comprehensive plan for the town of Hale recommends rural residential, and that's a whole, what that all means, we can get into that.
Wouldn't the start of that be at the town board to start talking to us, rather than us starting it here?
True. I did hear from the town chairman that they did not want to pursue rezoning of their town at this time. I received that communication from them within the last month or so.
I do have, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Virg.
I do have their land use plan here, and here it says, the town of Hale's first land use map was developed approximately 16 years ago and designated the majority of the property in the town in a residential district, R8. The residential 8 district recommends a housing density of 8 houses per 40 acres and discourages agricultural uses. The residential 8 designation was utilized based on resident input at that time, was based on concerns over restricting housing development. Over the years, the restriction on agricultural uses have caused agricultural producers issues when seeking to locate or expand farm operations. Based on experiences with the residential 8 district and changes to the state's farmland preservation program in 2015, the town of Hale reevaluated the town land use map and redesignated the majority of land in the town rural residential, which recommends a housing density of 4 houses per 40 acres and permits farm uses. So.
Okay. I think that's beyond the scope of what we're here for.
It is.
So.
As long as, I don't know if you feel comfortable with the road, or maybe they could answer your concerns a little more.
Sure.
There'll be 2 feed trucks a week. Be coming through and they'll be coming in off of Lund Road and they'll go through, so there'll be one more traffic across at all times.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't know if there was gonna be like semi-traffic or things like that.
They'll load eggs out every 2 weeks, so there'll be a semi, but they'll be in the nighttime hours.
Gotcha. That was, my concern was the roadway and waste runoff, but if it's state regulated, I assume that's all taken into consideration, so.
Yep, I would believe it would be, yep.
Yeah.
So, okay. So any other questions from the committee, Dave?
Just a point, not really pertaining to this, but this is for 2 chicken barns, and it looks like the animal units just barely exceed the requirement for this. So 1 chicken barn would not require this process?
It would not require the second conditional use permit we did, but it would require the first one, yeah, we did.
Okay. Good question. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Andy, anyone?
Nope.
Hearing none, I will call the vote. All in favor of approving this conditional use permit, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And these do go to full county board, or we have authority on these?
This is it for this. It doesn't.
You guys are good.
Yeah.
So,
And I'll get your permit issued for the building permit. That's, I signed it, so.
Okay, thank you much.
all right, thank you guys. Next item is a revisit for land use change rezone from transitional agriculture, TA, to commercial, residential R20 for Melanie Lapine, landowner Melanie M. Lapine and Alan Lapine. This is sent back from county board this last month. So we do not have a public hearing on this.
Correct.
So we have an update, and this is likely the gentleman who would like to have questions. County boardroom. Yep, good timing, Jared. We just got to your item, so I'm going to put you on speakerphone and we'll have some discussion, and I'll involve you when it's appropriate here. All right, thanks. Okay, so we got him on. All right, so Verge.
Okay, just so you know, Al Lapine is here. Al,
Yep,
if you want to
Al, do you
have a
wanna
seat
take a
over
seat?
here. As Kellen mentioned, you voted on this last month, sent it to county board. I did not realize that Jared was trying to email me in the morning, and then we had the wrong number because we weren't told that the number had changed. So he had also tried to call and was unable to get through. So giving Mike that information, Mike went to county board, presented that information, and at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, the board felt it should come back to this committee. So that's where we are. And I did talk to Jared, but since he's on the phone, I'll let him speak. Or
Sure. Jared, I think now if you want to take a minute and voice your concerns, and we'll have discussion, I assume.
Okay. That was a call for Jared, correct?
Correct.
All right. I couldn't hear whoever was speaking on the speakerphone.
That was Verge, and yeah, it'd be very difficult, I think.
Okay, so if there's anything important, just let me know. I think, if I were to try to be brief and boil it all down, I think the primary concern from our perspective for folks who live on the road, at least for my family, is the current state of the road, the size of the road in particular. And on behalf of the town of Sumner, I'm aware of what their annual budget is for road construction and repairs. And let's just say it's in the ballpark of $200,000. And I question what is the required width of the road. If it wasn't for the lightning storm last night, I planned on actually measuring the road. It's quite a bit more narrow than the county roads, of course, and there's no shoulder to speak of. So, for example, at the moment, if a school bus is coming down the road, you cannot fit another vehicle. You have to pull off. If there's 2 full-size trucks or vans on the road, both vehicles have to put a tire onto the 6 to 12 inch shoulder that's available prior to the 8 to 15 foot drop off, depending on which side you're looking at. So I think if there's something along the lines of a development, I don't know how it works to communicate with the town of Sumner, but I think they should be involved, because what I foresee is quite a big renovation in terms of managing the water and widening the road so it's actually safe enough and legal for two vehicles to pass.
Okay,
Any comments or questions on that?
I guess that's, so some of that, as far, let's try and speak for the committee, we don't have authority over the roads. Those are concerns that should have been brought to the town of Sumner. Not saying these aren't valid, but that is not something that we can deny a permit for if the town of Sumner has approved it.
Okay, and has the town of Sumner approved anything to your knowledge?
Before the rezone even comes to us, they have to have went through it and basically approved it, and they would have met with Mr. Lapine as well.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe that ship has sailed, but I'll talk with the town of Sumner then on that topic. The second one being, I've witnessed the field flooding before, and it used to be per the Van Tassels and the late Geraldine in particular, there used to be, I think, a 15-year, 50-year flood. Well, now it happens more like every 5 to 7 years. And what happens is all of the flow from both the east side and the west side of the interstate up to what's called Ballots Hill, if you get 4 to 6 inches of rain or a quick spring melt, we have a 6-foot culvert. It'll exceed the really deep drainage ditch on our side, which is up to 15 feet. It'll go over the Van Tassel Road, and then it'll gradually fill that field space depending on the severity of it. So as you think of developing an area like that, I question and assume it is not considered a floodplain. But I question if that's something that needs to be reevaluated, because that water has to go somewhere. It can't escape to the opposite side of the interstate. And again, it does play into the road too, of course, because right now it's channeled along that road. But I think the main question there is this in a floodplain?
Can anyone speak to that?
I can. I specifically looked into that, and the floodplain is south of the county road, Double N.
Okay, so the floodplain is actually south of County Road Double N. Up there north of Double N, there'd be no floodplain located there.
Okay, yeah. And obviously that's a mistake, because on our side too, the field probably 50 to 100 yards into the field has been significantly underwater that I've seen. I think the last time was around 2018 when we had the quick or the large snowfall amount year and then some spring rains. And of course, we graded our home accordingly, and we intentionally built in an area that's never been used for ag when we sectioned it off, and kind of planned for that water. But I think it's at least something that people should be aware of if they weren't, is those fields do flood, and the last happened again about 5 or 6 years ago. And that would be the portion of the field that is most to the south, towards Double N and towards the ATV State Trail.
Okay. Is there anything else that the committee or Mr. Lapine can address for you, Jared?
No, I guess my final question is I'm not, the letter stated that the intent was to build residential homes and storage units, and I also heard rumors about more of a camp setup, an ATV focused park, if you will. I heard lots of different stuff through the grapevine, so I'm just wondering what actually is the intent of development? Is it for single-family homes? Is it apartment buildings? Is it storage units for private or public? Can anybody speak to what the intents are?
Okay, Al, would you like to
Yeah.
offer some?
Yeah,
That
so,
would be-
so definitely the grapevine is accurate, and all of those things have been brought up. Whether any of them or all of them would happen, I don't know that for sure. You know, there's a lot of other factors, and now obviously I'm well aware of the water situation. I know it's out of the floodplain, but I agree with you, the south end of the property could potentially get wet. But as far as building, you know, I do have a pretty extensive construction background, and I don't foresee this being, you know, a huge development project. I mean, there's just, you know, with the other parameters.
If you guys could summarize, I can just hear a tiny bit of what Alan said.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's not your fault. There's just no way to talk to.
Sure, I understand. I just, with there only being 3 residential lots, obviously that'd be a maximum of 3 residential properties, which, like I said, with a lot of other variables, you know, and not to get off track, but if interest rates keep going, they might not build anything there, you know. But three houses over the course of, you know, quite a few years, you know, I don't think would be considered extensive construction. You know, and then.
Again, if somebody near the phone could summarize that, I just can't make it out on this end. I got my ear right to it.
More or less, he's stating that, that there'd be max 3 houses on it, and, you know, there's no plans, would be fair to say there's no plans on that happening in any certain time?
You know, I think hearing all of that, you think all of that's gonna get built immediately, and I definitely don't think that's the case, you know. But we did select this property specifically because of its transitional ag status versus other very similar properties that are in exclusive ag or other. So that's.
All right, so I caught your summary of the intent was something like 3 residential lots.
There would be 3 residential lots in the whole rezone, along with a commercial property, if I'm not, for storage?
Correct, and the only reason that kind of came about was because that portion is closest to the interstate, which it was kind of everyone's consensus that wouldn't be ideal for residential, so it's really,
Sure.
you know, creating some gap
space.
between the interstate,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure. So the commercial property would be towards the interstate, because less people would probably want to build a house right there. So that was the reason for that.
One other thing, I guess, while
Sure.
we're at it, in response to his first concern about the road, the original draft showed the access road immediately when you get onto Van Tassel, so any traffic would be, you know, immediately turning off of Van Tassel and not going down the whole road.
Sure.
And just kind of the way that the property's laid out, you know, and as far as frontage and things, that didn't really work out. But I would still be open to doing even just like a, you know, temporary access there to keep all of that traffic off of the road. But like you said, the
Okay,
township.
I think I caught that the access road would come off right away after the first culvert. Is that it?
That's what he'd like, and he's still willing to do it.
That's an idea, just to keep traffic
That's
off the road.
Probably something that would be discussed amongst the township and
Yeah, yeah. And
more
I think
so than
that would
us.
be, you know, I think that's just smart planning to have it jet off right away, because then obviously the road concerns are no longer really relevant. And don't get me wrong, I didn't want to step on any toes. I think it's more the, you know, when somebody buys land, they have the right to do what they want with it, just as we did. But I think the fact of the road considerations and the water considerations are the 2 main topics, you know. So I don't have anything else to add. I guess that's my piece. Any questions for me at all?
No, at this point, I think that satisfies the rest of the committee, so we appreciate you giving a call, Jared.
All right, well, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Bye now.
All right, bye.
Any other questions from the committee while we're here?
I guess just.
Go ahead, Randy.
You know, you could address the ATV, UTV park you mentioned.
So again, you know, that was just an idea that had come up because the ATV trail is so close, and really the only reason that came up was because there was a conversation about what other options are there with a property that's in commercial, which again, like I said, the portion closest to the interstate would be in commercial, and that was just something that came up. If someone wanted to, either do a rental cabin for UTV, ATV trail stuff, which I'm not that into that, but I do see a lot of that becoming more popular. So, or a camper. But again, whether that will happen, I don't know for sure. It was just an idea that was brought up.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions from the committee?
I don't have any questions, just have a comment. I was kind of the one that pushed to bring this back because it was our equipment that failed the person to be able to
That's fair.
have his say. So I didn't hear anything that changed my mind from I don't
Last
know if we
month.
need a motion to take it back? Is that what we
I
need to
suppose we
do?
need a motion to send it back and
Okay, so
approve.
I'll make that motion to take it back to full county board.
Okay, motion by Larson. Second by Munson. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving this rezone, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We will send this on to full county board in a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item 12, postponed from our February 1st meeting. There's a public hearing on a conditional use permit for a new telecommunications tower. Any
I
update?
reached out to US Salio, and they still are not going to bring it back to committee at this time.
Okay.
Still hasn't been resolved as far as the issues that are going on.
So we'll just keep it on, postpone
I would
again.
just keep postponing it, I guess, it's kind of a month-by-month case as far as the landowners fighting amongst themselves on who's got the right to whatever going
Okay.
on there. So.
We don't want to be in the middle of that.
No, we don't. So,
How about just postponing it until we hear from the tower people that they want it back on?
what's that?
Just postponing until the tower people
Yeah.
contact saying they want it back
Do we
on.
need that? Rick is here. I'm going to ask corp counsel if that's the right way to
I thought there was
proceed.
something at one of the
That's-
meetings that said we would visit it monthly.
I think
but-
there's reason for doing
So-
it, but hopefully Rick can shed light on it for us.
If I remember correctly, I think you started the public hearing, you
We
opened
did.
it, but it's never been concluded.
Correct.
And I feel that if you don't put it on a month-to-month basis, you may end up having to do the republication of the notice of a public hearing. Not that that's a big deal, but it's an expense, so.
It is. It doesn't really hurt to have it on here, discuss it for a minute or two either. Randy?
I have something kind of related to, like, bringing something back to the board. Like, relating to this, the town of Trempealeau didn't require him to notify any of the adjoining landowners, so nobody was aware of it happening. None of the neighbors were aware of it happening. So the township never got any feedback with the concerns of the neighbors. And I did address that with them in public comment, but they didn't have any comment at that. But it's another time when, the public was denied their chance to comment in a public hearing. So I don't know if that precedent goes from our committee down to the township level. Like, is this?
I would say that if this committee feels that the township level did not follow proper procedure, it can be referred back to them to follow proper procedure. I'd have to review, I don't know it off the top of my head, but if there was something that was not complied with, because certainly that would make this subject to what we call a collateral attack. If it is all approved all the way through and implemented, someone could collaterally attack that from the beginning. So if this committee feels that it was not properly followed, you could send it back to the town to make sure they follow the proper procedures.
Mark, any comments?
I mean, I think the township varied from what their procedure normally would have been, but I don't know if we would tell them how they can operate, I guess. That's kind of my opinion. I mean, normally they would, like when Andy had his in the beginning, they went around and had these things signed.
Mhm.
They didn't do that for some reason, but I think they were misinformed that they felt they had no option because it was a communication thing or a public thing or whatever their excuse was, but I don't really know if it's in the best interest for us to question the town's procedure, because they, not every township even does what they do, as far as going around and polling all their neighbors.
Sure.
Most townships don't do that at all.
No.
And I'm not against it, I'm just throwing it out there.
Sure.
And the only thing I would add is that we certainly aren't telling them what they can or can't do. It would just be that, does this committee have the jurisdiction to make a decision on what's before them if there was a defect in the procedure? I'm not saying that there was, because I just don't know off the top of my head. So, but that would be the language, I guess, that we would use if that were to be the case.
Mr. Brownson?
To relate to this previously, the cell phone tower, or the cell tower that went up adjacent to our property, the town did not have a public hearing. It was relied upon here at the county level. The town did not pursue that part.
I was
Just signed the.
kind of thinking that the same
and let
thing
the county, since we have
would be
conditional.
effective here.
Correct.
Yeah, because we will be having a public hearing. So to that end, does it make sense to take this off and hold the public hearing and post it when we are ready to deal with it again? I don't know.
As according to Rick, it saved the petitioner an extra fee or whatever, since he'd already paid it once.
Okay.
Do we penalize him, make him pay it, go through the whole process again, since he did it once and we are?
We
It
aren't
wasn't,
the-
yeah, it wasn't
we
his, it
aren't the
wasn't ours.
problem.
No, we're not the problem.
So to me, that kind of, I don't know.
Right, it's 50-50 call, whether we leave it on or.
Don?
When was it originally brought forward to the committee?
February 1st, the very first, yeah.
So do we leave it on for 6 months, and if it hasn't been addressed in that
When we
time
take it
frame?
off, that can be.
Plus, I'd rather reach out to US Cellular and tell them
That, hey,
that if
we're
we don't
gonna-
get this resolved,
we're gonna pull it off.
Remove it and pull it off. And
Okay.
instead of doing that today,
Let-
otherwise
give
they
them
might have
some
showed
notice.
up and wanted to speak
Okay.
their case, and
We can, I think that's fair. It isn't that big of a deal to update every month either, so. I think we'll move on to item 13.
I think.
Oh, we have,
Nelson, quick question for you, or not a question, but a rumor that's out there is that everything was resolved with the family, and they've already started construction, so I'm not sure.
No.
the only thing they've done there so far is done some soil borings for testing the soils. So they were out there one day doing some soil borings, and there was someone brought to my attention that there was something, and I called US Cellular right away, and they said, no, all we're doing is some soil testing. And it sounded like they weren't even going down that far, and believe that they were just investigating the soil material that the structure's gonna be set on. So that's what I know about it.
All right, appreciate it, that way I can just get the information out there.
Sure, you're welcome.
fair enough. Okay, so I think we're gonna move on from that issue now. And Charmaine is here for our County Conservationist Operations Report.
Yeah, so we've been very busy over the past month. One of the things that we just recently started working on was the water quality trading program. In that program, our department, we assist, so right now we're assisting the city of Galesville to identify and correct potential sites that are concerned that could be producing phosphorus. So for example, we're reaching out to landowners that are specifically part of the Beaver Creek watershed. This is the focus point for the city of Galesville, and we are reaching out to these landowners to see if they are interested in this program to repair their stream banks, to reduce the phosphorus for the city of Galesville wastewater treatment plant. And this is part of the city of Galesville's requirement for their WPDS permit. So our role is to essentially be a broker, contact the landowners, do soil borings, and Davy Engineering will be the ones that are designing the stream banks and also working with the city and the landowner to come up with a project that everybody can agree on. So again, our part is just to identify the landowners and have a free assistance for the landowners. And and let them know that there is this program out there for them. Another thing too is on March 23rd, so last month, we had a Building Healthy Soils Practice and Profits seminar, and this event was organized by our department along with the Buffalo Trempealeau County Farmer Network, River Country, Western Technical College, and Wisconsin Farmer Union. And we had presenters like Daniel Olson, Aaron Silva, Grant Breitkrautz, Brad Hobrock, and the topics were on alternative forages, cover crops, roller crimping, grazing, biologicals, regenerative agriculture, sustainable, and nutrient management. And this was part of our, I guess for us, we helped cover the cost through our grant, the nutrient management farmer education grant, and we worked with all these different groups to have a event for people in the area, and we also had a farmer panel too, so it was a really good way to have the community members come in and learn these topics and also hear what their neighbors and other farmers are doing and what's working and not working, and what's their profits are for their land as they're implementing these different practices. So the turnout was really well. I think we had over 58 people that attended, so it was a good turnout. Also, we had some students from Arcadia High School attend, so it was really good to see younger generation students interested in building healthy soils. We are working on our lakes management planning grant. So tomorrow we're going to have one of our first official kickoff meetings with our DNR agency members, and just kind of come up with first steps on the planning. So looking at different timelines for when we're going to do our point intercept surveys for the curly leaf pondweed, and also discuss public perception and surveys to see what the general consensus and ideas and concerns are for the people that are living around the lakes, as well as perhaps having focus groups to incorporate hunters and fishermen and others that are interested in the lakes. And we're just coming up with the very beginning stages of the grant and where we want to see it going. So also, again, that grant is from March 15th of this year, and it ends December of 2024. For the tree and shrub program, the pickup date will be sometime in May, so that's coming up really soon. And the soil judging, again, that's May 2nd of 2023. So I'll be sending out registrations very soon to the schools to see which students are interested. I've already reached out to these schools in January, so they do know of this contest that's coming up, but we just want to solidify who exactly are going to be participating and which schools are still interested. And also I'm working with the NRCS on gathering volunteers, and we do have a soil judging official scorer on board, so we'll be digging the pits on May 1st, and again, the contest is on May 2nd, so we're getting there. That is all. Well, I guess another thing too, we are very busy on designing our conservation practices, so we are ahead of the game, I think, versus last year. We have a lot of them almost done being designed, so that's good. Then we can get that out to bid. So that's where we're at.
Very good. Good to hear the soil judging is coming back too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, any questions for Charmaine? Thank you. Very good. Next item on agenda is DLM Director Operations Report. Mike.
Good morning, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, I had a meeting with Samuel's group regarding the remodel, just to let you guys know that the latest draft that I saw had DLM in the south courtroom. Many things were discussed. One of the things that we were allocated in the previous draft some space across the hall for hard copy files. That was removed and allocated to another department. So essentially what we're saying is we're going to need to find a way to scan all of our hard copy files, because there likely won't be physical space for hard copy files. So we're going to be working on looking into that, how we can do that, and probably we'll be addressing that with a budget request in the fall, in the 2024 budget. And so I don't know when the next version draft of the remodel will come in, but looks like we're settling into the south courtroom. Trempealeau lake lots, that was kind of brought up before, like those multiple lots that we received from FEMA, that in the past has been kind of a PTED committee thing, and my recommendation is kind of that it probably stays there, but just know that staff recently met with the National Wildlife Refuge, which is adjacent to 3 of the lots, and we're really looking at doing kind of a park-like use on these lots, which would include a kayak path to a kayak landing, and then bringing back floodplain trees and shrubs in the area. There's not a lot we can do with those lots, but it really seems to function more like a park with recreation and conservation in it. So I know there were some comments that, well, which committee does it be with? But it's, if you want to discuss that, where that project should have the oversight, we can do that later. And then recently also listened to another solar farm webinar, the part 2 with the Counties Association, very informative. So that was good as well. And that webinar should be online on the Counties Association site, so I'll probably send that link out to people so they have that. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mike. Our next item on our agenda is a review of our County UDC Uniform Dwelling Code ordinance discussion, possible action. So this we've been discussing for some months now. Do we have anything to add today? Or are we keeping it on for?
My understanding is that there were some questions about a definition of an accessory structure.
Yes, that sounds accurate.
All right, so I'm going to just put together these are just some different definitions that I was able to come across after doing some research. Actually, I don't think Mike is going to see this. Okay. So the bullet points are different definitions that I came across when I was doing some research on this. Let me just pull it up here. The one that I have bolded, that's the one that was probably the most commonly used definition for an accessory structure. And so that's the one that is, again, typically used. Some of them on there were some definitions that apply, a maximum square footage limitation. Generally, some or a lot of them would use that they have to be used exclusively by the owners and occupants. Those are just some things that I found. The bottom bolded one is just a suggestion as to what this committee might want to consider as the definition of an accessory structure. But again, that's just a suggestion based on the research that I did and the information that I found.
So the bottom one kind of summarizes the rest of it?
Correct, it does, yes.
In an attempt to try and define it.
Without getting too specific and keeping it a little general for some flexibility.
Okay. Thoughts from the committee?
And again, our UDC code references garages to be inspected.
Mike, can you refresh us on where we're at with this? I do apologize. I'm struggling to recall exactly what the intent of the initial.
Some of what was discussed previously was We don't have a clear definition of what a garage is, so garages get inspected, but accessory structures do not. And the idea, I think what's being discussed is what should be inspected regarding our Chapter 23, I believe, of our Uniform Dwelling Code ordinance. Currently, we're required by the state to inspect single and two-family homes. That's the state minimum. Trempealeau County has opted to inspect additions to single and two-family homes and remodels, and then also garages. And so I think some of the discussion is whether or not should we continue to inspecting garages, or should there be clarification to things, or creating a better definition, or expanding that inspection to accessory buildings, or removing inspections as an option for garages, removing that as an option as well.
The goal of bringing this to the committee was,
We had some comments from some contractors, I would say, that we're the only ones in the local area that inspect garages. I think is that a fair thing to say? And some contractors expressed some frustration with it.
it's additional cost to the homeowner and a barrier to the homeowner.
Correct. So basically, it's up for discussion. Not that we have to act on it. If we're happy the way it is, we're happy the way it is. If we want to do something different, then, this would be an opportunity to make a change. Go ahead.
And maybe we went through this and some of it, we need a little refresher, but when that was brought before about being the only ones in the area inspecting garages, when the inspectors go through the garages, have we found issues where we want to keep that in place, or is it just getting to be kind of like a
I
fluff
think
extra?
the one portion of the item that Kyle Krybeck brought up is sometimes inspection when there's a wall 10 feet or more, that plywood, there's like, I think 2 sheets of plywood, and the seams have to be staggered. So that was the issue when there's 10-foot walls. That's a correction or inspection thing that he brings up.
I went to Eau Claire County's website, and they have a page that says, when do I need a building permit? And they're new and, so there's our new 1 and 2 family dwellings, including manufactured homes. Additions that increase the physical dimensions of a 1 and 2 family dwelling, including decks serving an exit from the dwelling. Decks serving an exit from the dwelling, alterations, remodeling to the structure, or alterations to the plumbing, heating, or electrical systems of a 1 and 2 family dwelling. New or rewired electrical services of 1 and 2 family dwelling, all electrical wiring in a detached residential structure. It's tough, you can't really say all accessory buildings have to be inspected, because then you get into the farm stuff. Farm buildings, those are accessory structures. And then any conversion of a building from one use to a different use, all electrical wiring in a commercial structure, all electrical wiring in an agricultural structure, and that is determined by the state. New or rewired electrical services for a commercial or ag structure. I don't know if that helps you or not.
I'm not sure if it does either.
Just so you know, they're just doing the electrical
Sure.
in a detached garage. And as far as, contractors, they put the cost on whoever
them.
they're doing the work for.
Correct.
So
Right.
it's
Not a
really not a
burden
cost
to-
to the contractor.
Yeah.
But it is a cost to the constituents, and if
Correct.
it's beyond, if it's
Yes.
more, it's a greater requirement than what the state requires, I'm not sure why we would want to do more than that, unless there's history there or that, of course, I don't know about. But I do think it goes on to the homeowner to, I know there's talk, or there have been concerns that have been brought up about protecting the homeowner. There's no reason the homeowner can't have inspections, and should definitely have inspections, but I don't know that they should be required to have permits to do the work.
One thing to keep in mind, our Uniform Dwelling Code ordinance applies in all the towns, cities, and villages in the county, except for the city of Blair. So if the committee wants to go in a direction, I would encourage the committee to kind of select a recommended, if you're going to do a change, select a recommended change and request input from each of those municipalities.
I think that would be a smart way to go at this point. But I think it makes sense that we don't want to upset someone that we're doing zoning for in doing all this. So I think, so what question do we want to ask them? What way are we leaning towards going? I think we need to provide a possible direction before we just, you know.
I've got more to go yet, but I've done a couple, taking the the list of 5 that we put together and discussed with, well, I started out with Unity. And said, what's your input to this? Where do you think we should go? We won't say what was decided, but yeah.
Okay, so do we have wishes for the, what do we want to send? Do we want to have the department send some feeler letters out to each
I
municipality?
would really encourage that you have a specific recommended change, so the municipalities have something to react to. If it's just open-ended,
then it's less likely to get responses.
Yeah.
Or good responses.
Yeah.
Either way.
In my case, I listed them all and said, this is my personal one. And then said, argue with me, please.
Well, I mean, go ahead, Dawn.
Yeah, Mr. Corman had put together kind of some options for us at the request of the committee. I think 1 or 2 meetings ago. I think that would be all right to put together a letter and say these are options that are being considered. What would your input be on that?
If you have preference to one or adverse to another one, just let us know.
Are they required to follow what we come up with here?
they have, the municipalities passed, I'm trying to remember exactly, I can't remember how the ordinance is written, so it's either they opt into our ordinance, or if they don't pass their ordinance, a UDC ordinance, inspection ordinance, or both, or something like that. I just, without having it in front of me, I can't remember. But essentially, there's a list of communities in that ordinance.
Because you did say that Blair had opted out, so they're not.
Yeah, they do their own. They do their own UDC inspections. So I don't know if they inspect garages in the city of Blair. I don't know. But they certainly, they're required to do single and two-family homes, so they must be, I'm assuming they're doing that, at least that portion. So we can send a letter saying, hey, if you don't want to have a specific recommendation, we could say, hey, the state required minimum is single, two-family homes. Currently, our county ordinance that of which you are a part includes the inspection of remodels, additions, and garages. Those are all optional ones. As a municipality, would you support changes, and what changes would those be? That's pretty wide open. Pretty wide open. But that's one version of the letter we could send out to them.
I would suggest we pick one of the definitions that Rick just presented us with to be added to that letter.
That was also one of my questions. I understand that we wouldn't want to just say in an ordinance that we inspect all accessory structures. But I do like the idea of changing to that terminology versus garages, except we do not want this to impact agricultural buildings. So could it not be that we would inspect accessory structures except for those being used exclusively for agriculture?
Yeah, I think there would be, we'd have to work on that definition. But the intent, I think, in what you've described, I understand that.
Okay. So do we have a consensus that we'd like to move forward with? The two, you provided a couple options a couple months ago. Are we comfortable moving forward and asking for input regarding those as two possible options? For
You're asking the citizens building just.
correct, to send us feedback on scenario A, scenario B, whatever, however it makes sense to.
Along with adding one of these descriptions of which.
Or the bottom one that kind of summarizes. Either one could work.
Mr. Nelson, I don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I don't have any information in front of me, but is there anything saying there for the size of the building?
No, there's none of, oh, no, Andy.
We have one on our 5 list that specifies the sizes.
As what Mr. Niemeyer had provided us, there are no size specifications from any other county's description of accessory building.
Sure.
Would that be accurate?
Some of them did have some. I didn't include all the different ones because it varied as to what that amount is. It wasn't consistent amongst all of them. It just was piecemeal here and there. So, Andy, I did, once I realized that you were appearing virtually, I did email it to you. I don't know if you have access to your county email at the moment or not.
I do not, but I will get it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
I just recommend, I mean, if there is an issue with the size, you know, I just like the idea of how the state does it when it comes to cubic. If you're concerned about 9 foot, 10-foot ceilings, you start getting the cubic feet, it's gonna help when it comes to how big they can do it and not, I guess you'd say, not try to cheat on the idea of, okay, I can make it this big because I don't have to worry about going this high. It's this many cubic feet, and if you go beyond that, you can do inspection, if the size is a concern.
Okay. Thoughts from the committee?
I'm actually trying to find the document that Mr. Kornmeyer had.
Do you have us? So they gave us 5 different possibilities. One being status quo, no changes. Number 2 is meet only minimum state requirements, permit and inspect only new single and 2-family homes. Number 3, permit and inspect only new single and 2-family homes and additions. Number 4 would be no changes is except for the removal of garages and accessory structures. Number 5, be no changes except for permitting and inspecting accessory buildings. New accessory buildings will be inspected with any of the following criteria. Over 600 square feet in area, framed walls over 8 feet in height, or anything including plumbing or electric. So if you build a 6 by 10, which would be a stupid sized building, but accessory building, but you have you have water or wiring in it, it would require inspection, which maybe it should. I'm not saying it shouldn't either. Just you could.
Well, it doesn't require a permit because it's under 150 square.
Well, that's the minimum size.
And that's a zoning size. That's a zoning size, zoning permit. The 150 square feet.
We're in the weeds now. So
Yeah.
doesn't matter. See Verge for all your specific permitting requests, because don't ask this guy. I don't memorize it. Yeah, that's what she gets paid for, right? So,
Perhaps we just want to define on there, if the committee agrees, that, the accessory structures excluding ag, when we put that out, if that's what the team is agreeable to. But I do think putting out those options to the townships and letting them have some input is a good idea, and that probably the right next step.
And I think one of the challenges in all this is, I don't think we have a good, the whole garage, there isn't a definition there, and that creates
Right,
some
so then using the term
to-
accessory buildings helps.
Yeah, and we would need to, probably massage that, some of these definitions some more to clarify when is accessory structure ag and when it is not ag. That's not always as clear.
No, there's multi-use stuff going on.
If you have a tractor in a building, is an ag building, if that tractor is in that building and has a snowmobile in it, is it an ag building? Those are the issues we deal with, and we run into in determining what's ag use and a residential use.
That's what makes the whole thing
I'm
muddy.
looking at the definitions here, and then the top one, a structure which is on the same parcel of property as a principal structure, and the use of which is incidental to the use of the principal structure. A farm tractor is not incidental to the main structure. So wouldn't that
take care of that.
secure that?
Are you talking?
What the point you brought up was, which is it?
Are you referring to the house? Are you talking about that as the primary structure?
Right, yeah.
I mean, one could certainly argue that a farmhouse, the principal use of it is a farmer lives there and that's their accommodation. So anything that they use in the farming business could be incidental. So, I mean, one could make that argument, I guess. So that's where it gets murky, like Mike was referring to, so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I had a guy come in, he said it was a pole shed, and I said, well, what are you gonna store in at my tractor, because I raised commercial strawberries.
That's agriculture.
So, right.
Because the other example I was thinking of, and even if it's not a tractor, if it's a farm truck and it's parked in a building or structure, one could argue that that's an accessory use to the principal, so that there's a bunch of arguments that could be made in some form or fashion.
Correct. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
That's why when I wait on them, I ask them, is this for residential use or, more farm use or other use? And I also look at the map. Are they on a residential lot? They have 2 acres? Well, they're not farming on 2 acres.
Right.
So it's a series
Context.
of questions. It's not just one question.
No,
It's
right.
a series of questions.
Absolutely.
And eventually we get through it,
It's not as black and white as.
No, it's not.
And it never
And I
will
think
be.
that's why the ordinance is written the way it's written.
Correct.
Because it isn't black and white.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
To that instance then, Verge, would you like it to stay as status quo then? Because you deal with it every day.
I think the status quo would be fine, or I think you might just want to limit it to the initial construction of a detached garage, because the wiring concern came up, and your job is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of people. And I know you say people have some liability. I agree with that. But not everybody knows about electricity. And so you could either do, the initial construction of a residential detached garage. You could keep it the way it is, or you could, like Eau Claire County did, you just have to inspect the electrical of a detached garage. But to go to accessory building, to me, that includes everything that's out there. And to me, that's a little extreme. And like I said, then you run into the farm stuff, but farm, they're requiring electrical inspection now because they've deemed that commercial. So, those are my feelings.
Good input.
Very good input. Not sure if it gives us guidance or not, though.
You know, I like the whole idea, Mr. Nelson, about the electrical being one or maybe the only factor that we deal with after this discussion.
I think you can find a good reason why that makes some sense. So I think I could support that being an option that we send to the municipalities that we work with.
I agree.
And leave the accessory definition out because, as Verge pointed out, I think it really does make things harder as opposed to help. Whereas electrical's pretty straightforward.
Pretty cut and dry, which I really
Yeah.
do like.
Yeah. So,
It can be, it can also not be.
you would know more than we would.
One thing by including the electrical on the type of we're talking about would probably result in an inspection where at the state level with farm wiring, at last I knew, I've been getting out of this, there's so few state inspectors, very few of these jobs actually get inspected. You do the state permit, give them their money, and you don't see them again.
Well, or two, a lot of what's happening is they'll call it an ag building, and then they come back and say, I want to pay for electrical inspection. Because like you said, they can't get it through the state.
Sure.
So, then they don't want it to be called an ag building.
Okay.
And so are we looking to, when we're sending this to the municipalities, like in this committee, are we looking to decide exactly what options we're listing out in there?
I think we need to give them, this is what we're considering, provide us feedback on either option, or if we only want to assign them one option, I mean, it's up to us too. But I think we want to, if you look at how long we've been discussing this with 5 options, and then realistically even more than that, we could pound this for the rest of the year, I'm sure. Bottom line, I think simplicity is our friend in a lot of ways. So the more I think about the electrical inspection, it probably makes it more concrete for Verge and a little cleaner.
And I agree with Mr. Nelson on that.
Okay. So I think we could leave status quo as an option, like we leave it exactly as it is, because we have operated just fine with it as it is. And other option be inspecting only electrical on garages and basically we don't want to we could use Eau Claire County's language perhaps for that option.
Yes, I agree. I think that's the two options we should send unless
Somebody else feels differently.
Yeah, we'll have to work, we'll work on, so status quo, communicate what the current.
Yeah.
Currently,
explain
we
that.
do all these things.
Yes.
And the committee is considering 2 options in the review of this ordinance, keeping everything the same, or removing inspection of garages and requiring, requiring electrical inspections.
Yeah. Does that sound friendly to the committee?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think we need a motion to that effect.
Yeah, it's clear what
Yeah.
we need to.
What we need to do.
Get the letter
Next
out.
step.
And then we can have, one of the challenges is timing for them to get the letter, communicate it in their organization.
We may not get to discuss this again until June.
So I would think we'll give a target timeline to get feedback.
By the end of May.
By, end of May, and then we'll say we intend, I can put something in there, we intend to kind of potentially address this as a committee at the June meeting.
Okay.
Please check the agendas, posted agendas, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
I think that sounds like a good video.
We could let the Towns Association know, I think they meet on the 25th of this month or whatever, let them know to
That'll
be
be
aware
in
that
there.
something is coming
Yep. Good
for
idea.
this.
Is this letter going to include a definition based on what we got today or not?
I think
I think it should.
but it also gets muddier if we try and define the accessory building, which is what we're, right, so I'm not sure that it should.
Right now, if
Well,
it's
I'm
not a
thinking like
garage.
in the letter out there for them to consider feedback to us on. That's what not that it necessarily should, but.
But I think, did we agree as a committee that we were going to send just the two options, which is just what we're currently doing, and then secondly would just be
Electrical.
do what was required by state, and then anything that has, any building that has an electrical component to it, right? So that actually takes a definition out of play.
That's where you.
So if you have what that means is a 10 by 10 shed with electric in it would get inspected for electrical.
Correct. It's straightforward, there's no gray area on that then.
Which I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Everybody good? I think that's good progress. Okay. Any future agenda items? That's our next item on the agenda. Any ideas, anything we need to discuss? Anything that's come up in the department? Verge or Mike or? Hearing none, I don't know that we have anything to add to our current load. Our next regularly scheduled meeting would be May 3rd at 8:30. I assume we have no conflicts with that, so we'll move forward with that. Item number 18, discussion, possible action regarding issues related to contractual obligations or needs in the Department of Land Management.
I just want to preface this with, I know that there's a closed session item. I didn't know if, and I know this committee has met and discussed this previously. The open agenda item is on there only if there was something to be discussed in open session. Otherwise, the closed session is there for the
bulk of the
for the
discussion.
purpose. So I wanted to throw that out there. That's why it's worded the way it is.
I'm not aware of anything that should be brought in open at this point. Is anyone else?
Unless visitors have got something to say.
Yeah, I guess we do have some visitors here. I don't know what's appropriate and
That's up to the committee to decide how they want to proceed. Mhm.
so we can allow people into closed session if we choose to and hear their thoughts in there maybe, if that fits. Rick, any concerns with that?
It really comes down to the committee. And this is just a suggestion,
Yep.
I know, and this is based on our conversation at the last meeting that was held.
Correct.
If you go into closed session and invite them to come in and have a conversation, at some point, maybe if the committee wants to have a discussion about the topic.
Ask them to.
And just a suggestion, and not because I don't think that they should hear anything.
No.
Sometimes the conversation is a little more freer
Yep.
when those things happen. Just a suggestion only.
I think that's a friendly suggestion.
Then
Yep.
speak your mind and we discuss that.
Yep, we can have a discussion involving everyone and we'll move forward from there. So hearing that, I am going to move on to item number 19, which is a closed session. And I would like, if somebody would read a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make the motion, go into closed session per Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G, to confer with legal counsel for legal advice regarding issues related to contractual obligations/needs in the Department of Land Management.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We'll do a voice vote. Waldera? Todd?
Yes. Yes.
Munson?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Severson?
Yes.
Nelson, yes. We will give the television studio a few moments to close down.